Hi, I'm Clayton with Furuno USA Tech Support, and today we're going to talk about software updates for version 6.01 in the TZtouch2 12 and 15-inch displays. Now before we get started, we're going to back up all of our user settings, our waypoints, and our routes on our blank USB drive that I've got inserted in the USB slot. And to do that, we're going to go to Home, Settings. We're going to scroll down here to Files, and under Files we're going to use Export all points and routes. It's going to ask us where we want to save it, which is the external drive. And then we'll say OK, and it will take a few seconds, and it's going to back up all the points to the USB. Now the export is complete, so we can say OK. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to scroll down here to Backup Settings. This will save all of the user settings to the flash drive as well. So we're going to click on Backup Settings, and then obviously it gives us the external drive as a source, and now it's backed up all of our user settings as well. Now this update comes in two parts. The first contains the operating system and the application and is loaded by micro SD card. The second part contains the internal sounder update, the preloaded world chart data, the new marine zones for the US and Canada for the Sirius XM satellite weather, and the new e-guides. And this is done by USB jump drive plugged into the USB pigtail on the back of your machine. Now the software needs to be downloaded from our website, www.furunousa.com. You'll be able to search by model number to find your software. Now once you've downloaded it to your desktop on your PC, we need to unzip this folder by right-clicking and selecting Extract All. Once this is done, you can open this folder, and there are two more folders inside. This is part 1 and part 2 of our update. Part 1 being the OS and application that will be loaded on our micro SD card here. And the second part is the internal sounder, the base world charts, the marine zones, and the e-guide, which will be loaded on our USB flash drive. Now once you've unzipped them, we're going to put them on the root directory of the USB flash drive and the micro SD card. And what it should look like when it's loaded correctly is this. So now that's done, let's get started. Now to begin part 1 of the update, we have to have access to the back side of the machine. So we're going to flip this around here, and we're going to use our micro SD card slot located in the back of the case. And I'm going to remove the cover, and we're going to take the chart card out of here. This is our chart library card. I'm going to insert the software card in the slot. Make sure it locks and clicks in, of course. We're going to turn this back around, and we're going to turn the unit on, and it should go into our update. Now, as the update begins, when the machine power is on, you'll come up with a black Furuno loading screen that'll tell you at the bottom the system is now updating. This should be on here for a few minutes while it's loading the initial files. Now, after a few minutes, the screen will go black for a second and then switch to a second loading screen with a warning that the system is updating. Now, after a short amount of time, it should switch to a regular boot up screen with a yellow progress bar that'll start traveling across the bottom and show you the current program number. Once this progress bar has continued to the end, the screen will go black, but the power button, seen in the lower right-hand corner of the display, will stay green for approximately 5 minutes. During this time, the unit is still updating, so do not power the unit off for any reason. Now once the power icon has turned orange, the unit has powered down and part 1 of the update is complete. We can now remove our microSD program card from the back of the machine and continue on to part 2. Now before we get started on part 2, we need to remove the program card for part 1. We don't want it to go back into the update next time we turn it on. Now while we have the cover off, we're going to put our preloaded SD card with all of our chart library on it back in the slot, and then we'll put our cover back on, which will keep everything watertight. Now to start part 2, we're going to insert our USB flash drive in the USB slot, and we're going to turn the unit on. And now there's our beep. Now we can let go, and the process will begin. Now that the second part of the update is beginning, the first section that it's going to do is the internal world base data, which includes the 3D data, the world base charts, the tides, and the marine zones. Now the second part of this is the internal sounder update. And now to complete the update, it's going to do the e-guide, the internal manual. Now that part 2 is completed, the unit will reboot and come back up into normal mode. At that point, we can remove our USB flash drive and the update is complete. Now that the second part of the update is finished, we have 2 more steps to do before we can complete the update. Those are a default reset of the display itself and a default reset on the internal sounder. Now, because the second part of the update added a few extra features for the internal sounder and communications change, we have to do a master reset. Otherwise, it will not communicate correctly with the sounder. So to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to go into Home, Settings, and we're going to go down here to Sounder. Now, the important part of this is, to do this right, we have to make sure the fish finder source is set for the internal sounder. In this case, the TZtl15F. Now that we've got that selected, we can go down to the bottom here, and we're going to use the Set Hardware to Factory Default. So once I hit that, it's going to ask me, am I sure I want to do this? I hit OK. Now it's cleared the default settings in the sounder. That's part 1. Now the second part is we're going to go down here to, under Settings, to Initial Setup. We're going to go down here all the way to the bottom to Serviceman. Now under Serviceman, it's going to ask us for a password. That password is Furuno, F-U-R-U-N-O, space, service. And then green check mark confirm. Now it's going to exit the application and take us into the Serviceman, where we're going to do the default reset on the display itself. Now that the system has entered the Serviceman mode, we can go to the Utility tab and then Factory Default Setup to go into our default reset mode. Now it's going to give us a couple of different selections here. The one we want here is the second one up from the bottom, which is Factory Default Delete All Settings. I'm going to touch on that. Now it's selected in the window, and I'm going to hit Reset. It's going to give me my warning. Am I sure I want to do this? Yes. And now the factory reset is complete. So I can hit OK, exit, and then we're going to power off the machine. It'll shut down and reboot, and now we can use the machine. So I'm going to go power off, OK, and now it's going to power down, and we can turn it back on, and our machine will be ready to use. Now that we've exited out of the Serviceman mode, and the unit is now repowered, we can import our user points, routes, and user settings back into the machine, and it will be ready for you to use. For further information, we have a complete write-up on the software update procedures available on our website, www.furunousa.com. And if you need further assistance, tech support is always ready and standing by to help.